Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani and Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani and Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm film scholar and strong guiding hand and stompy foot, Noelle LaCroix.
And I'm story expert and pulseless, impure, follically fried vampire, Lani and Rich. And we are here today to talk about Tough Love, the 19th episode of Season 5.
Tough Love aired on May 1st, 2001, and was written by Rebecca Rand Kirshner and directed by David Grossman.
As you all should know by now, this is a fully spoiled Buffy podcast, so we will be talking about whatever we want from the whole run of Buffy and Angel without regard for standard societal niceties. So if you care about spoilers and you haven't watched it all, come back later. We'll be right here where you left us. Maybe I'm not evil, but I don't think I can be good. So let's go on patrol. In Tough Love, Buffy has to quit school in order to take care of Dawn. Ben gets fired from his job for being gone for 2 weeks, and while he's packing up, he turns into Glory. She yells at her minions for not being able to do their frickin' jobs, pardon her French, and now she's got to do it for them.
So I think you better rack your little minion brains and tell me everything that you saw when you were spying on Buffy and her wacky pals. Then I'll figure out who the key is.
Dawn's been skipping school, and Buffy has to go meet with the principal. She comes back to the magic box and asks Giles for advice. Giles tells her that she has to put her foot down with Dawn, and she asks Giles to do it. Giles says that Buffy's her family, and Dawn needs her to be firm. She comes out, finds Dawn fooling around with Xander, Anya, and Willow, and she puts her foot down and sends Dawn home to do her homework. Willow tries to talk her into taking Dawn to the World Culture Fair with her and Tara, but Buffy says no.
Don't worry. It's not like I don't have a life. I do. I have Dawn's life.
At Willow's dorm room, Tara tries to give advice about dealing with Buffy, drawing on her experience losing her mom. Willow gets testy, feeling like Tara knows everything and she knows nothing. Tara lost her mom, Tara's been out longer, Tara's been practicing magic longer. But when Willow brings up magic, Tara says that Willow's power frightens her, and Willow gets upset.
It frightens you? I frighten you?
The argument turns into Tara's insecurity about whether Willow is actually into women, or if she might change her mind, and Willow gets upset and leaves. At home, Buffy is putting her stompy foot down when Dawn pushes back, and Buffy tells her that if Dawn doesn't shape up, they'll take her away. Tara goes to the World Culture Fair by herself, sitting on a bench. Willow wallows on a beanbag chair in the magic box. A hand slides into Tara's at the fair, but it's not Willow.
Is this seat taken?
At the magic box, Willow talks to Giles about the fight with Tara, but their talk is interrupted by Giles discovering a minion spying on them. Giles pulls the minion in and tortures him until he speaks. He tells them that Glory's going after the key, which she thinks is Tara. Willow rushes out.
Call Buffy and go look in Tara's room. I'm going to check the fair.
At the fair, Glory crushes Tara's hand and tastes the blood, realizing she's not the key. She asks Tara to tell her who the key is, and Tara refuses. Willow shows up just as Glory sucks Tara's brain. Glory disappears and Willow rushes to Tara's side, but it's too late. She takes Tara to the hospital. Spike watches over Dawn, who thinks she must be evil.
Maybe I'm not evil. But I don't think I can be good.
When the hospital keeps Tara for observation overnight, Willow wants to go after Glory, but Buffy tells her not to. Willow says fine, she won't go after Glory, and then immediately rushes off to the magic box to get supplies to go after Glory. She shows up at Glory's, her eyes black with magic, and begins the beatdown.
I owe you pain.
Buffy goes to Spike's crypt to see Dawn and tells Spike about Willow. Spike says there's no way Willow isn't going after Glory right now. He would. Buffy rushes off and finds Willow. She's hurt Glory and slowed her down a bit, but she's running out of power and Glory's just getting started. Buffy distracts Glory just long enough to get Willow out of there. The next day, Willow, Tara, Dawn, and Buffy are in Tara's room when Glory pulls the wall off the room. Tara gets distressed, and when Dawn tries to calm her, she looks at Dawn and gives up the game.
The light. So pure. Such pure green energy.
Dun, dun, dun! Cliffhanger!
Oh, shit! Here
I
we
hate
go!
cliffhangers, Noelle. I hate them.
I know you hate cliffhangers. I know you do.
It's not fun. I don't appreciate it.
It's a mean cliffhanger, but it's also kind of a great cliffhanger because, like, here we go, right? Like,
It's
here we
yeah, it
Here we
is.
go!
It is.
It's getting
the
so
next.
real.
It's the next tick of the roller coaster. You know, you
Yeah.
just know this thing is starting. Now we're getting towards the end here, so this is when we start this, like, you know, fast roll through everything else that we're going to do this season. And this is a great season. There's a lot of great things in this season that I really, really love. But my first question, as always, is Noelle, darling, my love, what'd you think about Tough Love?
Oh my God. It's tough, right?
Yes,
like,
it
it's
is.
tough.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of those episodes where I just, like, feel for everybody. I mean,
yeah.
I feel for Willow and Tara a lot, but I really feel for Buffy. I mean, from the get-go, having to drop out of school or feeling like she has to drop out of school to take care of Dawn, and we see her kind of like flexing these muscles of like, all right, I have to do this because you know, it's not enough that she's, you know, the Slayer. She also now has to be the guardian of her younger sister, and it's
right,
like this huge shift for her, and it just, you see it weigh on her the entire episode, and then Willow and Tara have their first big fight, and oh boy, is it a fight, and you know, and just everything that follows. Like, it's a lot. There's a lot going on in this episode. And lots of big feelings ensuing as well.
There are a lot of big feelings, you know, and the thing is, like, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it does feel, this episode has never been one of my favorites. I like a lot of things that happen here, but it does feel a little disjointed. Like, we've got all this stuff with Buffy and with Dawn, and with I've got to put my foot down and everything. And that's a big deal. Like, that Dawn, the idea that Dawn's, you know, skipping school, that she could end up getting taken away from Buffy, like, that's a big thing. And ordinarily, that would be like the main story in this, but that's a side story in this because we're really focused on Tara and Willow, which, by the way, I really enjoy that story. I love the two of them. This whole thing is freaking heartbreaking. When Glory slides her hand into Tara's at the fair, oh my God, you know.
Great moment.
Yes.
Great
so everything
moment.
else, I just forget. Like, when I look at this episode, it's only Willow and Tara for me.
Yeah, and there's definitely a parallel drawn between Willow and Tara and Buffy and Dawn, and I like it. I like parts of it. I also, there are parts of it that don't quite work for me, but I appreciate what they do with that arc over the course of the episode, for Willow especially, because, you know, we start out and Willow's like, I can't understand, you know, I'm trying to, like, help Buffy, but I don't know what she's going through and I don't know what to say, to Willow clearly dealing with a bunch of her own insecurities about her identity, to that final scene where Willow has made the decision to take care of Tara, and she says something to the effect, like, basically indicates that she'll take care of Tara even if Tara never gets better.
Yeah.
But she can't quite say it. You just see it. She trails off, and you just kind of see it cross her face. And she and Buffy share this moment of like, this is what it feels like.
Buffy reaches out and touches Dawn's hair and says, I know,
this
right?
is what it feels like to have that person for whom you really will risk everything, sacrifice everything, because that is what they are to you. And it works for me in some respects and not in others. But it's also just a huge, like, it's just a huge thing to try to encapsulate in a single episode of television. Like, how do you do that? How do you boil down the
It's so much
relationship dynamic? I mean, the Willow Tara dynamic is something that I love just about the show in general. As interesting and problematic as it gets. Oh God. I like when I say things about like loving Willow and Tara and their relationship, then I immediately like flash forward to the
there's some stuff. There's some stuff there, you know.
The things that make me just get like go nonverbal because they clearly have this incredible bond. And we are led to believe for a few minutes here that that's like on shaky ground. But something that I love about their relationship from the beginning, and in this episode I think in particular, is that their relationship is really about everything. You know, magic in this world is literal magic, but it's also queer sex. And Tara's horrible upbringing is the oppressive family dynamic that so many of us know so well, especially in the queer community. But it's also this foil for Tara's gentleness and kindness. And there's so much going on with these two, so that when they fight, they fight about everything. And I feel like anybody who has been in a serious relationship where there are, you know, there's like really deep feelings has had this fight. I mean, maybe not this fight,
where
but like
everything comes in. Where like here's the thing: they never fight, right? We have never, ever seen them fight, and Willow says as much when she's talking to Giles, like they've never fought before. So the fact that they have this fight, and this is right before, you know, Glory gets a hold of Tara, feels a little bit forced to me because it's not. It doesn't feel consistent with them. They seem to have really, really good communication. That said, they did have that bit of a conflict over over Dawn. The fact that Willow lied to Tara about giving the book to Dawn for resurrecting Joyce, all of that kind of stuff. So we do have a little sense that there is some tension brewing, and I think that there is. I mean, you're right. Like, there's like when you're in that kind of a relationship, right? You may have good communication, but there's always these little areas. And I think with some couples, they build up and they build up and they build up. So that when you finally fight, it's all everything's going on the wall. We're throwing all the pasta on the wall and seeing what sticks. And it's, you know, and it's all of these things. So they have this fight that starts out about, you know, I frighten you, you know, from Willow.
Well,
right?
It starts out, I mean, it doesn't even, like, that's the midpoint of the fight. It starts, I love this fight. I mean, I hate it, but I love this fight because they have had individually, Willow and Tara individually have had things come up for them. And we've sort of, you know, we've been dropping those breadcrumbs for a few episodes now. But they start out talking about the Buffy and Dawn stuff. You know, Willow, who has always felt this connection to Dawn, feels like Buffy's being too hard on Dawn.
Right.
And Tara sees where Buffy might be coming from. So they have this kind of like, you know, it's very under the surface, but they're like, no, you should be taking my side in this fight kind of thing.
Right.
Like you really start to see Willow's insecurity a little bit. And then Willow says she feels like the junior partner because Tara has been a gay witch longer than she has.
Right.
And then Tara counters with Willow's growth in the magic department, which raises the question for me, like, is this still a metaphor? Like, are we still speaking metaphorically about magic?
Well, no, I think we've separated lesbianism and magic now, right?
Which is a fascinating choice. Like, right? Like, just from a writing standpoint, like you have this really powerful metaphor, which is a great way to fly under the censorship radar. In 1999, 2000, 2001, you know, of like, no, we're going to do this relationship and we're going to have it evolve and grow sort of organically. Without going, ooh, lesbians, you know, which I don't think the show does. But Anyway, so they get into the subject of magic and Willow's like, you've been practicing longer than I have. You've been out longer than I have. And Tara's like, actually, your growth in the magical realm is frightening.
Yeah.
And then there's talk of, Freudian slips, a mistake in the speech.
Right.
Where the speaker reveals what she's truly thinking when you say one thing and mean your mother. And old joke. Sorry.
Yes.
And then,
still a good one, though. Still a good one.
And then Willow, who is already feeling insecure about everything because, Tara has all of this knowledge. Tara understands better what Buffy is going through, ostensibly. Willow projects onto Tara the fear that she might go back to, quote unquote, Boys Town after college.
Right.
Which really says a lot about what Willow is going through with her identity. And also, this is a thing that I think would be written very differently in 2020.
Yeah.
I've talked a little bit about Willow's sexuality and how she chooses to identify on the show, but how we have to read that through the filter of a writer's room in the late 90s, early aughts.
Sure.
And, all of the mainstream beliefs about and biases about bisexuality that feed into that. So,
right.
Willow's sexual identity is fascinating and complicated and clearly still very much a source of struggle or internal struggle for her, and we see it here with her. The way I think it's really interesting, something I love about this fight is the way that Willow takes her insecurity and puts it on Tara and essentially says, so you think this about me. And Tara does the thing that I think many of us have done in a fight, who's just been worried. Tara has been genuinely worried about Willow being on the fast track to level 30 mage. Takes the bait essentially and is like, well, should I be worried about you leaving me for a man?
Right. Clearly this is
we
in
weren't
your
even
head.
having,
so yeah.
We weren't having that fight, but now we're having that fight. And
right, exactly.
It's exactly that thing that happens in relationships where maybe the surface level communication is good, but there are things that have come up where there are little, there's been little tiny little baby red, cocktail sized red flags in this relationship. And now they have just they have all just, gathered together into a bouquet of a dozen red flags that all come they all come up at once. And it's hard. It's hard to watch. It's a lot, but it feels really real in that respect. Is it shitty that it happens as a kind of setup for the Glory Tara brain sucking? Yeah, it really is.
I think it's just a bit much. It's so fast. And I think that they have been kind of seeding this tension between Tara and Willow. And I think that they've been doing it fairly well. But just and then it happens right now. And then in the next scene, Tara gets taken by Glory. They don't have a chance for this to be I think that it would have more impact if it didn't feel like a narrative trick that they were doing just so that we could add more pathos to Tara's fate here,
Yeah.
But I think that they have been seeding it, and it's really interesting, especially when you think about it in the terms of where we're going with Willow, like how this is seeding things that are actually going to be happening, in season 6,
right?
Which I think is really, really interesting, and I season 6 is complicated. We'll talk about it when we get there. There's a lot of stuff in that I love. But part of this, we've got angry, powerful Willow, which of course is a response to what Glory did to Tara, right?
Yep.
And this is our first, I think, is this our first view of black-eyed Willow?
Yep, this is our first glimpse of what will become the aesthetic of Dark Willow.
Darkest, right? She opens up the book called Darkest Magic, right?
Which, anytime you have to hit a book with a hammer to open it up and then magic goes shooting into the air, okay, here we go. This is...
Yeah, it seems to me like Giles should have maybe gotten a safe. I'm just saying. Between Dawn going up there and getting stuff that can raise the goddamn dead, right? And then Willow just wanders on up and picks up something so powerful that magic literally flies out of it when you open it. And not just magic, darkest, black-eyed magic, right? Darkest. Yeah. There is no other form of there's nothing darker than this. This is the darkest. Yeah, this is the 60% cacao, right? 80% cacao, right?
This is the 100% cacao that you're like, this is not a treat. You're like,
there is no sugar cutting the bitterness of this magic.
Yeah,
yes. This is dark chocolate.
Not delicious. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Why would I do this to my taste buds? But anyway.
Yeah, because you got something to prove, I guess. But so we have this Tara saying that Willow's power frightens her, right? And we immediately follow that up with Willow's power, And what's really interesting, too, is that here we have this god, Glory. Up until now, Buffy has been beating the hell out of everybody, and Willow's been helping. Willow's floated a couple of pencils, this kind of thing. But this season, with the most powerful big bad that we've had to date, Willow has actually hurt Glory more this season than Buffy has, which kind of proves Tara's point. The idea that it's a little bit frightening, I think there's something to take from Tara there and be like, Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Willow was able to dematerialize Glory and, teleport her to
drop her in the middle of the sky.
Mid-air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That ain't nothing, man. That's a big deal. And so Willow's got all of this power. And then there's this moment, too, with Buffy where, she's like, well, when is the right time to go after Glory? When she's upset you? When it's dawn? And I'm like, yeah. I really appreciate that. I love this moment, too, where Buffy talks to Spike and Spike's like, oh, so really powerful, pissed off witch is going to do nothing because you explained it to her. And then Buffy's like, oh, my God.
That scene, we will get to the Spike Dawn dynamic and the Spike Dawn Buffy dynamic. But I do love Spike just oh, come on.
Exactly.
A little chat with Buffy and that's going to cool her down. No.
Well,
please.
yeah. And Spike is the one who, in Something Blue was like, she's holding on by a thread, guys. She's not doing okay, and he's the one who's able to see that, So I've always liked that. I really enjoy that about Spike. But, I love, there's so much here to love. I love this moment when the doctor asks if Tara's Willow's sister, and Willow looks at her and says, she's my everything. And the thing is, on the one hand, to fuck you, doctor, don't presume anything. And second of all, that Willow is just so all about Tara in that moment that just the way she says that isn't saying anything other than the truth. She's not making a point. She's not trying to correct the doctor.
Right.
She's just in so much pain at that moment and looks at Tara and says, she is my everything. And it kills me every single time. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. It's a great response to that kind of, the heterosexual bullshit that two women go a place together and clearly have some relationship. They must be sisters.
They must be sisters.
Rather than give that any, it doesn't even get a moment.
We don't give it any air.
Yeah,
exactly.
It doesn't
we
get
don't
to hang
acknowledge
there.
it. Mm-hmm.
There's no. It's a great it made me chuckle because, who hasn't been in that situation? If you are in a queer relationship, someone has decided that
your sisters,
you're just super, super, really good close friends, or your sisters,
friends.
or best friends, best friends. But it doesn't get any air. And Willow doesn't acknowledge it except to,
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's
she's my
the thing.
everything, which is,
Yeah.
I like it.
Well,
I like it a lot.
because the text by handing this to Willow and Willow saying she's my everything without acknowledging the heteronormative bullshit, right? It does something to combat that idea. Like it takes all of the legitimacy out of it by not even acknowledging it as a serious thing worth fighting over, you know?
Yeah.
And there's something about that I really like. And I love, oh God, she's my everything. Oh my God. And it just breaks my fucking heart every time.
The moment that gets me, like, even before anything has happened with Tara is when Giles acknowledges, oh, you don't quarrel much. And he says, well, it's over. And Willow just snaps too. What do you mean it's over? It can't be over. I just found her. I just found her. Oh my God, you guys. Full body goosebumps. Like, it's so queer and it's so good and so, oh God.
I love it.
This relationship, but I just want them to have all of the mediation and be like, look,
yeah,
like, look, what you're actually talking about, you're actually talking about when you're talking is this other issue that you really need to discuss.
They had a whole bunch. I mean, clearly they had a whole bunch of mud there on the floor just waiting to get like mixed up and slid in.
God, yeah.
But it's so good. And I mean,
but isn't it interesting how all of that disappears as soon as Tara is incapacitated?
Yeah.
As soon as Tara has been, has had this awful encounter with Glory.
Yeah.
Oh my good Lord.
Oh God, that's terrifying.
Yeah. But it all, like, all of the fighting goes away and you just see, and Willow just like snaps into, no, this is the person I love.
Yeah. Which I think is just, it's so incredibly wonderful. And I love seeing Willow, so powerful, go into Glory, knocking Glory back. I mean, like, what Willow is able to do by herself before Buffy gets there. Buffy gets there and annoys Glory. But Willow is the one who throws a spell behind them and actually makes them able to escape. Like, that's a big deal. And of course, we're seeding all of this, like, dark Willow stuff for season 6. Although, like, at the point that they were writing this, I believe that they still didn't know that there was going to be a season 6. I mean, this was written as both a season and a series finale with Buffy's death at the end. And that is a complete arc, from the beginning to the end. We have her dying at the end of season 1 of Prophecy Girl. I'm 16. I don't want to die. We have her dying at the end of The Gift, where she willingly makes this choice that I am giving up my life to save Dawn, So that's incredibly powerful and could have been a complete arc for the story in itself. I'm really glad that we do get season 6 and season 7 because UPN picked up Buffy from the WB and ran with it for 2 more seasons. But they're still seeding what's going to be happening in season 6 at this point, which is, of course, a Dark Willow arc, which I really, really enjoy in certain ways. We'll talk about that when we get to season 6.
Yeah.
Season 6 is complex, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and just this encounter with Glory is complex because, we have acknowledged how powerful Willow is. And this is the first time I think that we see this kind of like using power, anyone on the show really using power for revenge. Can that be right?
We don't have, I mean, we have Giles going after Angelus after he kills Jenny Calendar, and then Buffy comes in to stop him. We have a very clear anti-revenge story. And then, although what's funny is that we do have in our main core cast a vengeance demon, where we never address that with Anya. Anya has killed a lot of people. Killed, tortured, tormented a lot of people, is a vengeance demon in a show that I think has come down pretty strongly on the side that vengeance is not what we do. I mean, look at Buffy, right? Spike has killed a million and one people. We lost count in the 70s, right? Like, he's just killed a lot of people and done a lot of terrible things. As soon as he has a chip in his head and he can't hurt humans anymore, Buffy is not interested in killing him anymore because it's not about revenge. It's not about justice. It's not about getting back for things in the past. past. Buffy is about protecting people in the future, and that is where her
Right.
energy goes. It doesn't go to punishing people for things that they've done if they're not going to do them anymore, for whatever reason. So, I mean, that makes sense that, Anya, because she is no longer a demon and is unable to, wreak vengeance all over the place, that we kind of let it go. But thematically, vengeance is a very, very interesting idea. I think it has absolutely a place within the storytelling of this show. We don't really deal with it directly that much.
Yeah, isn't that what Jenny Calendar's uncle? Isn't that what Uncle Creepy says when
We're
he comes
about
in?
vengeance. Yes.
Yeah, and that's presented as creepy and
a bad
not
thing.
what you should be
Vengeance
doing.
is textually. I mean, I can't think of an incident where we do have vengeance in Buffy that is treated as though that's okay.
Or even just to kind of explode it out a little further, that kind of selfishness. Like, I'm going to go after this person. Like,
This
when
incredibly
we see
dangerous person who is after.
it never goes well.
No, it never
I'm going to
ends
go
well.
after this person or this creature or whatever who directly hurt me or someone in my life. Like, that never goes well for people.
Well, Willow would have died too if Buffy hadn't gotten there.
Yeah.
Willow probably would have died,
absolutely.
would have run herself down, trying to get Glory. And if she didn't kill Glory, I think she knew she wasn't going to. I mean, it was kind of a suicide mission, in which case, who's taking care of Tara then?
Right. Right.
Although she probably wasn't thinking that long term. But there's a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons why vengeance is, a bad way to go. And I think textually we have definitely, made that statement quite a few times.
But it's interesting to see someone in our core cast act out of what is ultimately kind of a selfish place in exercising all this power. And I don't know about you, but I feel very much two ways about it. I feel like, yeah, go Willow. It's awesome to see her. When she comes floating into that mansion with her lightning hands, I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, yes.
I owe you pain. Fuck
Bring
yeah.
it. Bring it. But at the same time, you're like, this is not.
It's not okay. Yeah.
Well, when I've already said, like, when you have to hit a book with a hammer to get the dark magics, in the gooey center, like, maybe that's not what you want to be doing.
Right.
Even if you are fighting a god, which, can we talk about Glory for a minute? Because what the hell?
Yes. Let's
the
talk
hell?
about Glory.
All right. Okay, Glory. We all know. I love Glory so much. She is a delight. But Ben loses his job because he hasn't been at work for 2 weeks, which, fair enough.
Yeah.
But what the hell has Glory been doing? Like, why hasn't she come up with this plan of hers, like, way, way sooner? What has she been up to?
Yeah. Well, she's
Getting
been
a
having
sweet,
the
sweet
minions.
manicure?
Taking her
Like-
baths, drinking her mimosas, having her minions run around and just not get anything done. Yeah.
I mean, she's a god, and we're told and we see several times that she is super powerful. And she tells us, multiple times she could just, kill everybody. So, like, why not just do it? I mean, why lounge around your mansion?
Right. Just go through them one by one until you figure out which one the key is.
Right? Like, it shouldn't be. There's not, just from a writing standpoint, like, there's nothing stopping her really from doing that other than, I know, story. Like, we don't have a story.
Right. We've got to keep her on ice for a little while because we have to have the Buffy bot, and we have to have I Was Made to Love You, and we have to have the body, and we have forever. I mean, Glory's been on ice for a while now, and now we're bringing her back, and we're picking up with her where she was before. But in this meantime, you would think that she would have lost her patience already. So, I think that Glory as an antagonist, like, there's definitely some things that if you look at it from her perspective, you're like, well, what the hell have you been doing? You hate it here. Like, people are meat sacks. You don't want to be here any longer than you have to be,
Yeah. And she's all powerful, but apparently not really. And has Ben been gone for 2 weeks because Glory has been doing something? Like, I don't know. It just doesn't.
Well, it
doesn't line up for me. Although I really do like that hand morph that we get from Ben to Glory in the locker room. as a change from the face morph, but also I like the way we get to see Glory's manicure so that then when she grasps Tara's hand later, we're like, oh, damn. Like, we've seen that, you know, we've seen that nail color before. We know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't buy it. And as much as I love Glory, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
This is terrible. Like, she will go to the magic box to get her own spell ingredients for a snake demon.
Yes,
punch.
exactly.
I don't even know what.
A key sniffing snake demon.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then we're gonna lounge around for a couple weeks while who knows what. I don't know. It's nitpicky.
But it does make her a little bit like you. And the thing is, she's kind of overpowered here because she is so powerful. Like if something had happened where Buffy had set Glory back, you know, right before like I Was Made to Love You and the body, like right before that, if she had done something that had seriously set Glory back, you know, where Glory needed to recover from that. That's why Ben hasn't gone to work in 2 weeks, because she's still recovering from that. So is he, right? Then you could have something where you'd be like, okay, now Glory is back on her feet after being set back and is ready to like deliver the damage. And you could understand why she took that. But I mean, we've had, you know, how many episodes now without much from Glory? You know,
Quite
Intervention, I think, was when she came back. We had I Was Made to Love You, the body, and Forever. You know, definitely those 3 without any Glory. Then we have Intervention where she grabs Spike, you know, looking for the key. So I mean, now we've got Glory. Glory is in business mode, which includes tearing a load-bearing wall off of if she doesn't want the key dead, and she doesn't, because she needs the key to have flowing blood for her plan, which we know, right? Then why tear a wall off? Like, that just seems like a big drama queen thing to do.
I mean, I don't know. And the only, like, I don't have a good in-world explanation for it. The only thing that I can come up with is when you make your big bad a god, you write yourself into a little bit of a corner.
A little bit. You do.
Really, like, what is stopping her from just flaying everyone in sight until she gets what she needs?
Until she finds the key, right? And if tasting the blood is a way for her to figure out whether somebody's the key or not, then okay, you know, like she can do that with all of these people around Buffy very easily. It is, I think it gives us a little bit of the bad antagonist feel, like the weak antagonist feel, especially for an antagonist who is so incredibly overpowered, you know, this season. I don't know. It's tough. At the same time, I find that if I don't think about it, it's usually much better.
Well, I still find her completely
says the girl
delightful.
Who thinks about everything way too much in Buffy. Yes.
I mean, she's still completely delightful. And that's really, like, you know, I'll freely admit that's part of the reason that she gets a pass from me on the, like, she's really overpowered, but she doesn't do much with it. But when she shows up, I'm just so happy that she's here because she's so fun.
Yes.
Like, her little... It's just a tiny little scene, but Glory's shock and delight that Tara is the key.
Yes.
When she thinks Tara is the key, I love it so much. And there's this kind of, like, I don't know, maybe this is my gay nonsense reading into this, but there's this kind of, like, the monks made the key a lesbian. Like, there's just a little bit of a, you know, I'm like, just because the key isn't actually a lesbian doesn't mean it couldn't be.
Could have been. Could have been.
What could have been. But she's so tickled. Like, when Glory thinks she's figured out who the key is.
Yeah.
She's so tickled. She says something about the monks gave her quirks. And I'm like, okay. All right. But then, of course, you know, as you've already mentioned, when that brutal scene on the bench where she squeezes Tara's hand so hard that blood starts to spurt out. I mean... Wow.
Yeah, no, that's really graphic.
It's some vivid body horror for a television show that doesn't really do that.
Yeah.
Except that now we do. That's something that I didn't talk about last week and probably should have with Glory torturing Spike. That this season we've kind of ramped up the
grotesque injuries. Yeah.
Yeah, the like actual like people get injured. It's not just a vampire gets dusted or, you know, we like fade to black as someone dies or
Buffy got stabbed with a crowbar. You know?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So we have that.
There's some like real
and with the stake. And Fool for Love.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Good Lord. Yeah, we've
had
some
a lot of
body
blood
horror
this season. Yeah.
More, you know, not obviously not a ton of gore because that's not what we're going to do on.
But it's some pretty visceral violence, I think, in a way that we haven't necessarily had in previous seasons, right?
For sure. For sure. And injury that lasts too. When Xander gets his hand crushed by is it Olaf the troll?
Olaf the troll. Yes.
He's got a cast on the next episode. And Spike, of course, you know, Spike's horrible appearance, his post-glory bruises, you know, are not quite a plot point, but certainly a talking point in this episode. Right. I mean, it's injury is now graphic. It's more graphic and it's more permanent. I want to say it's like not as, it doesn't, you know, it's not like we roll credits and then we come back the next week and everyone is fine. We come back and everyone is still carrying evidence of the fight they fought the week before.
Yeah. I mean that we have extended consequences for this kind of violence, that it's not something where we just wave it away with, you know, Buffy heals quickly or Spike heals quickly. Like Spike does heal quickly as a vampire, and yet the next week he is still torn apart.
Oh, he's a fucking mess.
Yeah.
He is a mess. And God bless the makeup department. I mean,
I know.
Really, really well done. But, you know, before we get into the delight of Spike, our weekly delight of Spike. I don't know. Yes. There's got to be some better way of expressing that. But before we jump on Spike, when Glory describes how brain sucking feels, we're also getting into this kind of viscera that we haven't totally explored yet.
Yeah, and she says, think about how you're going to feel when you got my fingers wriggling around in your brain. Like that is a very visceral description.
Vivid.
You know, and I mean, it's very uncomfortable, and it is. And, you know, the blood dripping from Tara's hand, you know, that is horrible. And then she says, don't say anything, don't scream, don't make a sound, or all these people are going to die because of you. Yep. I mean, good God, that's horrifying.
And what's fascinating simultaneously is that when she describes what the brain sucking feels like to the victim, she's also describing what she experiences when she's running low on human psyche.
Yes.
And I think that is mostly in the performance.
Oh, it's
because
wonderful.
It doesn't come off only as a threat. It also comes off as a trust me, I know. Like there's this
is my experience.
There's this connection between Glory and her victims in a way that we haven't really seen up till this point because she hasn't targeted anybody that we care about.
Right.
But that adds there's an extra layer of horror in the parfait.
Yeah.
Now, if this is her experience. And there's that connection between Glory and the people she brain sucks. I mean, yikes.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
There's something, I don't know what's scarier. A big bad who is that kind of focused, the sort of focused evil that is just intent on, you know, I'm going to achieve my goal and nothing you can do stops me, or this evil that is, I don't know. Glory has this connection to so much of the world despite not wanting to be part of it. And now to have this connection to the mental and emotional experience of her victims. There's something for me that's very chilling about that. I think in a way that maybe the single-minded evil,
right,
because the magical amulet thingy destroy the world is not.
Yeah, well, she has this experience. Like, here's the thing, is that it is kind of a perversion of the idea of empathy, right? Like, because she is explaining an experience that she has, right? And yet she has absolutely no problem doing that to somebody. Like, explaining how awful it is and how awful it is for her is a circumstance in which you would think there would be some level of empathy there. And yet with Glory, there is none. And that makes it even colder.
Yeah. Yeah. This is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you, but not really kind of a thing.
Yeah. Or this is going to hurt you a lot, but let's talk about me. Like, that's
which is really, that's Glory.
It is Glory
in a
100%.
nutshell.
That is on brand for Glory, right? But it's so good. And then, we get into this, of course, the result of this is that she does brain suck Tara. And then once again, Tara's been damseled, which we've had quite a lot of. Yeah, Tara's been in a lot of dangerous situations from which she must be saved, and she has been practicing magic longer than Willow. She has magical power. We've seen her do things. She's the one who helped Giles with the spell earlier this season. She's the one who was able to make it so that nobody could see demons. Like, she's got some power,
Mm-hmm.
And yet whenever we see her in one of these damseling situations, she's always so helpless, and the thing about damseling is that typically it's the kind of thing that's done to motivate a male story. Like, you have a woman who's in danger and then suddenly, the man has to save her, blah, blah, blah. And in this circumstance, it's not a man, it's a woman, but it's still a romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's still something that is motivating the movement here for Willow. But this, and I think in the past we've seen, like, when she was damseled, she was being attacked by Oz, in that circumstance. Like, we've had her just get hurt a lot and be in danger a lot so that we have Willow come in and save her or whatever, But I think that what we've got here in this particular instance is a little more defensible, because we've got strong story implications here. Like, Tara can see the key energy, right? She ends up giving up Dawn. And in the end, she's the one who leads them to Glory's, rickety scaffolding into the netherworld, So there's narrative use there. And it's not just about motivating somebody else's story. So I think that of all the times that we have put Tara in danger, this is probably the most narratively defensible one, I think. So, I mean, I don't mind that. I do love seeing how Willow cares for Tara, that we're not discarding Tara just because Tara has been hurt. And these are good notes there. And, while Tara getting her whole self back at the end kind of plays into this idea that her humanity and value would be somewhat lessened by this kind of disability, seeing how Willow cares for her and loves her through it regardless is really, really nice. And I love how Tara refuses to tell Glory who the key is. I mean, oh my God, in such tremendous pain, knowing what's going to happen. And when she just looks at Glory with that face of resolve.
Yep. that gets me. Like that. Yeah. When we've seen her suffering, we've heard she's whimpering the whole time Glory's speaking. And then we cut to her sitting there and she just kind of straightens up and turns to Glory and I mean, Amber Benson, come on.
My God.
The subtle facial shift where you just see her just brace for impact. There's nothing that Glory can do to her that is going to make her give up that information.
Right.
And it's communicated in her face with no dialogue, with nothing. It is brilliant. That moment is brilliant and so powerful.
Nicely done. And then contrast that right, with this male-coded minion, right,
Oh, dear God.
who Giles cracks it. He's like, I will never tell you anything. And then Willow and Anya turn their backs for a second. You hear the cracking of bones, but you see nothing. There's no blood on this guy. You don't know what he probably just like twisted his pinky finger. And then the guy's giving everything up about, you know, what's going on
God.
and how like incredibly weak he is. And then we have this strong feminine power in this story. I kind of dig that.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about the fragileness of the minions, if you will. I mean, they
you know,
really...
minion fragility is a real thing.
oh, those fragile minions. But
Fragile minions.
yeah, that's a great point. He's like, I will never give up. I'll never tell you anything. And then Giles is just like, girls, can you give me some twine? And as soon as their backs are turned, it's like...
And what does he do? Does he step on his foot? He can't
No
do
one knows.
much. That's a 3-second thing, right? You
It's
hear a
not,
bone
yeah.
crack, and this minion looks fine. The minion is not doubled over in pain. The minion's just like, no, I'll tell you everything. I mean, for God's sake, Giles might have just cracked his knuckles. I mean, who the hell knows? Like, and the
Okay,
minion's
that
giving it
would
up.
have been... Yeah, I love that we don't see it, so we never know. But it is like... I don't know. It definitely points up a kind of
I mean, it's a contrast
Yeah.
between what Glory does to Tara and what Giles does to this minion, and like, you know, that Tara will not talk. I mean, it speaks to feminine power. I kind of like that. But I'm curious though, what do you think about now post brain suck? We have dialogue for Tara that feels like this rambly. It doesn't make any sense. It's all, you know, it's all kind of weird. Like it means something to her clearly. But I find that dialogue, especially at the end where she gives up such beautiful, pure green energy. Like, come on.
right. She's so clear.
We
Like,
could have
she's
been
suddenly
much more
so
subtle
clear.
with that. Like, that was... Yeah, that whole thing I felt like was just a bit much. I don't like what they do with her dialogue afterward.
I don't love what they do with the
Post brain
Glory.
sucked. Yeah. Mhm.
like the brain sucked dialogue. I mean, I don't envy anyone the task of trying to write that. How
Yeah.
do you write that in a way
I mean, you
that
write it in
is
a way that makes sense once we know everything from the season, right? Like where it's something that you can look back on, you know? But I mean, even the brain sucked Knight of Byzantium, right? He's talking, the key is the link must be severed, such as the will of God, right? So he keeps saying that over and over again. He's saying something that actually makes sense in the context of his experience, right? He hasn't lost all connection with his ability to express himself. So for me, I look at it and I'm like, the fact that it doesn't make sense doesn't really bother me. The fact that it doesn't make sense even when we get to the end, Plastic and her six sisters, you know, like all that kind of stuff, like you know, is that a recycling, you know, thing? Is that like about the environment? What is that, you know?
right.
And I feel like I want it to mean something that we don't understand now in the moment, but that in the end, because all of these people that she has brain sucked, they're working with Glory. They can recognize the key. They have the ability to see things and understand things that the rest of us don't. So because they were magically brain sucked, right? So like,
Right.
while it may not make sense like now in the moment to the characters that are with her, if it was something that all of these characters were saying that makes sense later, you know, that we could understand once we have the full knowledge of the entire season, that would have been, I think, kind of interesting and kind of fun. But instead, it's just, it feels like all this nonsense. And poor Amber Benson having to deliver such beautiful, pure green energy. Like, oh my God, it's so terrible.
Well, especially when we have seen Glory's victims see dawn and not like it's not the rapture, you know, like they're like, you don't belong here.
You don't belong here.
You're not real. Like it's hostile.
Yeah.
But of course that comes from people who, at least at that point in the story, we don't trust. Like they're just scary. They're scary, crazy old men, essentially.
Exactly.
So there's, I don't know. That's a.
I don't care for it. I want there to be more there. Because it is a magical effect. It is something that has magically happened to these people. And something about that, it's just nonsense. None of it makes any sense. They're just completely gone. There's something about, I like that they seem gone, but they're not gone, so that when we get them back, it feels more it feels more narratively consistent,
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just, it's one of those things. And plus, even if you're going to give her nonsense, even if it at the end, whatever she says should be something that is clear. And we get that it's the key, but without being so incredibly explicit. That was just not good. That was bad dialogue. But speaking of Dawn though, we have some great moments for Dawn. I mean, not great in the principal's office, not great with Buffy, where she's just like, I'm not real. Keys don't have to go to school. All of that kind of stuff. Why can't the monks just put grade 9 in my head too? All of that kind of stuff is really irritating. But then we have this beautiful moment where she's going into the crypt with Spike. Spike is taking care of her and leading her through. And they're having this discussion where she's pondering her own essential moral nature. And I must be evil since all these evil things are happening because of me. And the thing is, that is such a typical kind of response to abuse for a lot of people, that somehow it's their fault, that somehow they're responsible for it and they're bad because it happens. When Dawn struggles with this, I feel that, from her, can I be good if I'm the cause of so much pain? Although, of course, it's not a real argument, because she isn't the cause. Glory in pursuit of her is the cause, but she is not the cause of all of this pain, So yeah, I love her struggling with that.
Yeah, she was grappling with this identity as the key before her mother died. And now, she doesn't know who she is really still.
Yes.
Her mother has died. Her sister is trying to be all the things to all the people.
Yes.
And it somehow, with all of this, all of the mystical and the fantasy, it still rings very true for me.
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis a 14-year-old, wait a sec, who am I? How do I have value if all around me people are getting hurt?
Yeah, I mean, everybody gets existential spin from time to time, but I mean, this kid is really, she's really dealing with it. Yeah, she has fucking earned it. And I love, too, that she's having this conversation with Spike, that she's talking to a vampire about the nature of good and evil is fucking chef's kiss beautiful. I love that, And I love his response. I love that moment when he's reaching out to touch her on the head to make her feel better. And then she starts talking and he pulls back real quick, he's trying to take care of her in the way that she needs to be taken care of. It's just so incredibly sweet. I love how unsure he is, in his role as a caretaker, somebody who's doing good things and caring for someone. I love that his pet name for Dawn in this episode is Platelet. Right?
Yes. That is delightful. Spike's nicknames for Dawn are some of my favorite writing on the show, but Platelet, I think, is tops.
Well, when you think about, all the things that Spike says, it's blood. It's always blood, right? He comes up with that. He's like, I'm not much of a thinker. I go with my gut. I follow the blood. Blood is everything to him. That is core to who he is. And so the idea that he calls her Platelet and he sees her, in the way that he sees blood, which is all about power. I love that. I love that he does that. And
some nice subtle, or maybe not so subtle, foreshadowing too about the importance of blood to the end of this season.
Yeah.
I mean, that it has been important. It's going to continue being important.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And it's pretty cool. So I love that whole thing.
Yeah.
I love him where he's like, that's rot. I know a little bit about evil, and then she's like, well, I can't be good. And he's like, I'm not good and I'm okay. And I'm like, wow.
That is probably the most Spike line I think that we've ever heard.
Yes.
Does that just sum up? I know we have been talking at length about him and how he operates and kind of his sense of himself and his sense of himself in the world. But I'm not good and I'm okay is
yes.
It's so perfect. It's so perfect for him.
Yeah. Oh,
and
no,
also,
it's absolutely, yeah.
And like sometimes that's what you need to hear, especially as, you know, a young teenager going through it, whether you're a mystical key or not. Like you just need to hear like, yeah, you know what? I'm not perfect either.
It's okay.
And that's like, we're allowed to
okay.
we're allowed to be messy and still be here. Like that's okay.
Exactly. And speaking of being not good, we get a little bit of Ripper in this episode, which I quite enjoy. This moment he pulls the minion in, he slams his head against the door, pulls the minion in, and he's being all tough. He's cleaning his glasses. He's ready to just throw some.
Don't make Giles clean his glasses.
No, seriously, because that shit gets real. That shit gets real. And then cracks some bones on this minion in like a heartbeat. I like seeing this glimpse of Ripper. I think it's important that we have this glimpse of Ripper because we are going to see Ripper again in the finale. And that's going to be a really interesting discussion when we talk about how he, you know, the role that he plays in this whole thing. But it's always fun to see badass Ripper Giles showing up in these episodes. I love it every time we see him.
And I love that all it takes is for this minion to just like show up.
Yeah.
And suddenly Giles is like, I don't know. It's like a switch flips, but I'm here for it. And Anya is here for it.
Yes.
The only thing better, I think, in that sequence than Giles doing whatever cracking thing he does to the minion while our backs are turned is Anya's delight.
Yes.
Anya is so into it.
Anya's interesting in this episode. I enjoy Anya in this episode. Again, we have another circumstance where Xander just talks down to her when she's going on about her rant about capitalism being essentially American, which, by the way, it is, and that's a lot of our problem. But... Yeah.
I mean, But you didn't have to bring the like xenophobia and ageism into it, Anya.
No,
I don't know.
Very true. But the way that
Anya's
Xander talks to her,
Anya's not great in this episode. But then Xander totally misses the opportunity when he's like, he says, it's time to be a little more inclusive. Not us. Just you.
Just you. Exactly.
Oh, fuck you.
Exactly.
Xander.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, Anya can say terrible things. And because Xander and the way that he talks to her is so much worse, I'm just like, I end up being mad at Xander even when Anya's behaving badly.
There's some bad writing for Xander in this episode, too. Just his whole, like... I mean, I love the line where he's telling Buffy that he's going to support her. And he's like, I'm searching for supportive things. And I'm coming up all bras, which is a cute line. But Xander, you are a carpenter. How about Arch? How about Joist?
Yeah.
There are like...
Or you're
there
a man.
Are
How about
jockstrap?
There are a million things you can do. There are places to go.
I mean...
Yeah.
He's a carpenter. Isn't like half of carpentry building supports?
I
like,
believe
I don't
that
know,
it is.
But
I mean,
anyway.
I think so.
Anyway.
Yes, exactly. But he's not one of those adults who views everything through his job. So there you go.
But I don't know. It's not great writing for Xander and Anya. Anya bums me out in this episode. There's not a lot of Anya. I mean, it's very sweet and I think almost redeems her in the hospital when Willow says, I don't know if I can sleep without her. And Anya says, you can sleep with me.
Oh,
it's just like so delighted. And then everyone looks at her and there's that like, kind of record scratch. And she's like, it came out way more lesbian than it sounded in my head. But it's a sweet gesture.
All right, so Noelle, what do we got for the girl power moment of the week?
Oh, not with a girl power bit.
I talked about it already, but I think for me it's that moment of intense eye contact between Tara and Chloe. Tara just wordlessly agreeing to sacrifice herself with so much strength, and it's so good, it's so moving, it's so badass.
Yeah.
I don't know. I gotta give it to Tara.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think that the moment that Tara looks at her and is like, I am not giving up the key, that is freaking brilliant. It's just wonderful. Yeah.
Yep.
So what's your favorite part?
Oh, I feel some kind of way about this, but it's Willow floating into Glory's mansion, eyes black, lightning hands. I owe you pain.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot. It's intense, but it's so satisfying narratively and, also personally. Like, if you fuck with my best love, like, I will definitely
I will cut
unleash some dark forces on you. Like,
sure.
I really will. Yeah, unless it's Willow's like incredible, perhaps magical spit. When she spits in Glory's face. I know it needs to be substantial so that it will register on camera, but damn.
Yeah, but that's a loogie. That is a very seriously worked up loogie. That's
perhaps of magical origin. We may never know.
I think it's left over from the Queller demon, honestly. It looks like that same goop. It is not good. It is not good. I hate that. I hate when people spit on each other's faces. I always hate that. It's always gross. Ugh. But anyway, my favorite part.
Tell me about your favorite part.
My favorite part is Dawn pondering her essential nature. I love that moment from her. I love the way that she's trying to deal with and process all of this stuff. And the way that she so vulnerably asks these questions about good and evil of a vampire. I love the whole thing. I think it's wonderful. All right, if you enjoyed this conversation, would like to join in, connect with the show on Twitter, follow @Chipperish and use the hashtag StillPretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now. So thank you to our August producers, Abigail, Alice, Erica, Rose, Jonathan, Kristen, Sarah, and Shelley. And this week's special message for our power producers. Well, I'm not good, and I'm okay.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/Chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or I'm searching for supportive things. I'm coming up all bras.
We will be back next time with Spiral, the 20th episode of Season 5. Until then, I'd do it. Right person? Person I love? I'd do it.